share something with you that Nandimukhi sent to me yesterday. I forwarded to the wrong person, and then it got forwarded to Premananda, about who was the author of Sri Brahma Samhita. Was it Bhaktisiddhanta or was it the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta? And here's the reference. What we'll plan to do is put this in a document, send it to Bangsidhari, I guess, and he can circulate it to all of you, so you have the authoritative answer to that question if you're asked in the future. This is a footnote to Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav. You know what that book is? Footnote. The booklet, Maha Mahopadeshika, Srila Bhakti Shuddhakar, parentheses, edited by Sundarananda Prabhu, and published in 1940, shortly after Bhakti Shuddhakar Prabhu's demise, states that the English translation of Chapter 5 of Brahma Samhita, ascribed to Srila Saraswati Thakur, was actually rendered by Bhakti Sudhakar Prabhu in collaboration with B.P. Tirtha Maharaj, unquote. That's the footnote. And this is an additional reference. Dr. Ghosh quotes a part of the Brahma Samhita preference that has a sentence which is not in BBT's edition. Quote, "Thanks would be pouring to Tridandi Swami Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha and Professor N.K. Sanyal, M.A. of Ravenshaw College, Cuttack, who have given facility to help the readers." So it's collaborative effort bearing Bhaktisiddhanta's authorship. And the BBT editor, I guess that's Dravida, confirms the same. The Brahma Samhita published by the BBT is full of grammatical errors. Grammatical, not factual. The BBT chose not to change anything under the mistaken idea that it was written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when in fact it was written by two of his disciples. And there's more. So I'll cut and paste and send this in a Word document. Hopefully you'll be able to read it. Here we go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is showing text 2, right? Text 2, yes? Text 2, right? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Sasar Jagrinda Tamishram Atatamishram Adikrit Mahamoham Chamoham Cham Tamashangyana Rittayaha Sasajagrinda tamishram atatamisram adikrit mahamoham cha moham cha tamascha vrittayaha Sasajagrinda tamishram Premananda. Sasarja, created, agre, at first, andhatamishram, the sense of death, atta, then, tamishram, anger upon frustration, adikrit, all these, mahamoham, ownership of enjoyable objects. Cha, also, moham, illusory conception. Cha, also, tamaha, darkness and self-knowledge. Cha, as well as ajnana, nescience, vrittayaha, engagements. Sounds pretty scary. Translation: Brahma first created the nescient engagements, ajnana vrittaya, like, it's a list of 5, self-deception, sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception, or forgetfulness of one's real identity. There hasn't even been creation yet. He's just getting things set up. Purport. Before the factual creation of the living entities in different varieties of species, the conditions under which a living being in the material world has to live were created by Brahma. Unless a living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life. Therefore, the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's real identity. That's this last phrase, ajnana vrittaya. No, moham, illusory conception. Illusory conception. Therefore, I read it. And by forgetfulness of one's real identity, one is sure to be afraid of death. Although pure living entity is deathless and birthless, the false identification with material nature is the cause of false ownership of things, which are offered by the arrangement of superior control. That makes 3 so far. All material resources are offered to the living entity for his peaceful living and for the discharge of the duties of self-realization in conditioned life. But due to false identification, the conditioned soul becomes entrapped by the sense of false ownership of the property of the Supreme Lord. It is evident from this verse that Brahma himself is a creation of the Supreme Lord. And the 5 kinds of nescience which condition the living entities in material existence are creations of Brahma. It is simply ludicrous. Prabhupada doesn't usually use that word. It is simply ludicrous to think the living entity to be equal with the Supreme Being when one can understand that the conditioned souls are under the influence of Brahma's magic wand. Patanjali also accepts that there are 5 kinds of nescience as mentioned herein. End of purport. So let's go back to the first verse that has no purport, introducing the chapter entitled Creation of the Kumaras and Others. So text 1, Maitreya said, O learned Vidura, so far I have explained to you the glories of the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its feature of Kala. Now you can hear from me about the creation of Brahma, the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge. So just to be sure what we just did from the previous chapter, it's the form of the Supreme Lord in his feature as or of Kala. So time. And time in different measurements has different features. And time makes the world go round. The force of time brings things into being and destroys things. In between, it appears to be maintenance, but the time is always, even when there's maintenance, time is destroying on every level, subtle and gross. So you need time to have creation. Brahma can't do what Brahma does without time. Brahma has time from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so now comes, after the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his feature of Kala, comes Brahma. Now we mentioned yesterday evening, the Bhagavatam is not chronological. There's a number of things that happen in between the previous text or previous chapter and this chapter. Lots of things happen. But one of the things that happened is Brahma was born, which is mentioned in the previous chapter. But when he was born, what happened? And that's Brahma Samhita happened. Or it comes later in later chapters of this canto, but he's not just born, but he's beginning the process of creation. So in between being born and executing the process of creation, he does self-inquiry and receives 2 mantras, and he chants his mantras, and he becomes enlightened and becomes well acquainted with the absolute truth. So he's the head of our sampradaya. That little part is not covered in between chapter 11 and chapter 12. That's okay, it's not chronological. It's describing what he does after that. Now in Brahma Samhita, there's many nice things. In Brahma Samhita, there's 3 main sections. What he does to become enlightened, his enlightenment, and what he does after that. What he does after that is he has a little pause. He turns to Krishna, Govinda, and says, help. I just had all this fantastic realization, and now I'm going to have to create a universe. So how am I going to keep this consciousness that you gave to me before I created the universe, while and during the creation of the universe? It applies to us. We sit in the Bhagavatam class and we get like, wow. And then we go off and do our stuff and it's wow, just went away. Remembrance of Krishna went away. It's a good question. It's a very practical question. And let's just go to the next verse where he's now doing the creation and he's creating stuff that are going to keep people from understanding the Govinda prayers or Krishna. Purposefully. Now, I'll read this and that and the other thing and the other thing. Makes it impossible in that condition for persons to realize what he realized, and he's the head of our sampradaya. It seems like it's contradictory. He's going to, as the head of the sampradaya, he's going to give knowledge that neutralizes all these 5 things that means knowledge isn't going to enter. Poor Brahma. What a conflict. So the 5 start with, well, he says he created at first antatamishram, sense of death. But before, at least the way the Prabhupada has set up the purport, is the misidentification, forgetfulness of who we are, and misidentification with who we aren't, which logically precedes fear of death. Because we're eternal, but we forget that we're eternal, and we think we're not eternal, we think we're something else, and some upadi thing. And then fear, because we want to live eternally, but the upadi thing isn't eternal. The body isn't, the mind isn't, everything isn't. So fear. And then subsequently, the sense of possessiveness of things. It comes about as the chapter and this canto proceeds, when the creation starts to flow, the living entities doing their thing, because so far there aren't bodies. We don't have an indication even of living entities for Brahma to cover, or these features to cover. There's, before you even get a body to falsely identify with, the potency to falsely identify with the body is already there. It's set up. So how do you get out of that? By the other part of what Brahma does, and he gives transcendental knowledge. So this misidentification with proprietorship over stuff covers the real identity that all the stuff, all creation of God is his creation, therefore it's his. And therefore, because it's his, it's meant for him, in service unto him. But service unto him is blocked or impeded by this misidentification with that which belongs to Krishna belongs to me. I'm sure you're all reasonably well aware of the first verse of Ishopanishad, because the whole of Ishopanishad is centered on the first verse, and then extended further. Isavashamidam sarvam. Sarvam, everything, is owned and controlled by Isha. And now we know his name is not just Isha, but his name is Govinda. from the Brahma Samhita prayers, or Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Then Prabhupada goes on in the purport saying, it is evident from this verse that Brahma himself is a creation of the Supreme Lord, and the 5 kinds of nations which condition the living entities in material existence are creations of Brahma. So is he conditioned or is he not? Because how can he create something that he doesn't have? So he can have the potency to create something because he's Brahma. He doesn't have to be controlled by that same potency. At the same time, he, Brahma, can be susceptible, as happened in the Brahma Vimohan Lila. But his susceptibility wasn't inimical, due to some inimical nature. His susceptibility was due to his curious nature. Primarily, I'm curious. What's the extent of Krishna's potency? Let me match my potency against his and see what he does. Curiosity. It wasn't. You don't do that. He did that, and there were, the consequences were astonishment, and then his prayers and so forth. Brahma's prayers, very important prayers. But he can become bewildered. And he has the potency to bewilder. And he is sometimes subjected to that potency. But as we know, we don't look at Brahma as, something's wrong with him. We look at Brahma as Krishna says we should look at Brahma. And how we should look at any living entity that is unalloyed devotee of Krishna. They may make some mistake. Apichat Sudharacharo. Su Durachar. What he did was Su Durachar. But we look at him as sadhu because Krishna says to look at him as sadhu. And the next verse, Krishna corrected quickly. And he was corrected. He wasn't stuck. It was corrected immediately. I want to go on to something because Prabhupada writes in the last sentence of the purport that Patanjali concurs with what Maitreya says, or what the Bhagavatam says. There's 5. The way that he presents it is there are 5 states of consciousness. I'm going to read a little bit from Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and I'll see that you get a copy of this. At least I'll make it available if you want to read it. This is chapter 1 of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And I'll just read the translations. The first sutra is, I'm now going to give the teachings of yoga. Then he gives a second definition of yoga. Yoga is the stilling of the changing states of the mind. Because it's in this verse, in the subsequent verses several times, chitta vritti. Chitta, in this case, chitta can mean a number of things, but in this case it means the mind. And vritti means disturbances. Like waves are disturbances in the sea. You can't see the bottom of the sea because the waves are disturbing the vision. So the mind also, when agitated by chitta vritti, you can't see who you are. Next. When that is accomplished, that was pretty quick, the seer, that's the seat of consciousness, abides in its own true nature. Its self-realization is yoga. And yoga, the definition is already given. Otherwise, this is Sutra 4, the seer is absorbed in the changing states of the mind. 5, there are 5 kinds of changing states of the mind. That's the reference. Patanjali Yoga Sutra number 5. And they, same, this vritta, fluctuations of the mind or changing states. Specifically, chitta can mean consciousness, but in this case, in his use, it's the mind. And they're either detrimental or non-detrimental to yoga practice. And here's the 5. The first one is pramana. We discussed pramana yesterday. Pramana has different translations. Here the translation given is the right knowledge. Now, right knowledge can be situated in the mind, but that's not in the 5 that are listed in this verse of the Bhagavatam that we read. But Prabhupada's saying Patanjali agrees there's 5. So it's 5 states of mind. Pramana. We'll circle back to pramana. So that's his right knowledge. Then viparyaya. Viparyaya. It's one of the 4 defects of conditioned souls. We make mistakes. Viparyaya. To err is human. To err is the mind. It's one of the states created by Brahma. And vikalpa. Sankalpa, vikalpa. Vikalpa. It's translated here as imagination. Nidra, we all know what that is. Sleep. And smritayaha, memory. Or forgetfulness. So the Supersoul creates these things, and Brahma may be the agent to create these things on behalf of Supersoul, but he's as control tower controlling what Brahma does, that we heard already. So here's the 5. Pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, smritaya. I mean, it's sutras. There's not a sentence, it's a sutra. Then 5 vrittis. 5 states of mind. Pramana, right knowledge. Viparyaya, error. Vikalpa, imagination. Nidra, sleep. And smritayaha, memory. And then he goes through and gives a bit of a definition to each one. I'll just touch on the pramana one, right knowledge, because Prabhupada used that a lot. We discussed yesterday. How do you know something? Authority and experience. Now the way we talked about it yesterday is, how do we understand all these far out things about the passage of time across an atom and so many things. The sun crossing one atom is so many, etc., etc., etc. The duration of Brahma's life, etc., etc. We can't do an experiment. So we're relying upon authority. However, if someone becomes a superlatively qualified Vaishnava, they may realize by direct experience that's not within our grasp. at present. So we rely on authority, like Vyas, who writes these things, and Maitreya, who's the one that Vyas is quoting as having said these things. And so we're fine with that, because that's authority, and that's sufficient. And by acceptance of authority, gradually one can properly practice the purification process and become purified and understand more tomorrow than we understood yesterday. Gradually, like the rising of the sun, etc. So it can be by the most qualified person experienced. So then, celebrated message that Prabhupada referred to many times. Right knowledge consists of sense perception, logic, and verbal testimony. Those of you that are a little familiar with Tattva Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami he doesn't make reference to Patanjali, but he takes these three ways of knowing things: sense perception, logic, and verbal testimony. Verbal testimony is amongst the ways of knowing things. This is a little Tattva Sandarbha sidetrack. How do you know something? So Jiva Goswami asks, how do you know anything? For that matter, how do you know anything? You can perceive it, but there's defects in sense perception. So you can reason it, but there's defects in reasoning. And it's also based on sense perception. So what's left? It's hearing. And then there's different hearings. And the best hearing is Shabda Pramana is hearing, and Aparushaya Shabda Pramana is the best, because it's hearing from a source that's infallible. If you hear from Krishna, and then who do you hear from Krishna from? The cyclic succession. And that's the best means of knowing things, whether you can perceive it with your senses or not. Because you can perceive it with your senses and get it wrong because of your fallible living entity. So the best is Aparushaya Shabda Praman. That's the Vedas. And he goes further with it. Amongst the Vedas, what's the best part of the Vedas? And he reaches the conclusion the Bhagavatam is the best part of the Vedas. You know, step by step by step. He doesn't jump. Because he's a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who accepted the Srimad Bhagavatam as the best. So he's giving the reasoning and in steps how to get there. So that's, for us, that's the Amala Pramana, the best Pramana, spotless Pramana, beyond the modes of nature Pramana. Because his reasoning is amongst the Puranas, anyway, there's modes of nature. And there's Puranas that are influenced by, or written for persons influenced by different modes. And so the best is not just the mode of goodness Puranas, but the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is beyond the modes of goodness even, Pramana or Purana. So all of this is about what's right knowledge. And Brahma doesn't create right knowledge. It's eternal. Right knowledge is eternal. He has received it. He can deliver it. At the same time, he has some service to do, which goes contradictory to what he knows. But he has a service to do. He has to build the universe. Why does he have to build the universe? Because Vishnu wants it. Why does Vishnu want it? Because living entities they're disobedient. The obedient don't need creation. The disobedient need a jail. So they have a jail with rules. And you behave nicely, you get a nice jail cell. and you misbehave, you get a not nice jail cell. And it's perfectly arranged according to guna and karma. But the purpose of the jail cell is not just to laugh at the people who are put in jail and say, ha, ha, ha. The purpose is reformation. That Brahma has that service, that creation is for reformation. This whole chapter, creation of the four Kumaras and others, is for that purpose. And we should know what the purpose is, and we should know how to properly utilize all that's given to us. So let's go back to the verse and read what are the 5 creations of Brahma before he even starts building the universe. Brahma first created the nescient engagements, like self-deception, sense of death, anger after frustration, sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. Welcome to the material world. Now, supposing people don't know that, most people don't know that, so their going on is like, this is it. This is happiness. And what's not happiness is happiness. What's ignorance is knowledge. And real knowledge is imagination, fiction, or it's religion for people who just don't have it together to be intelligent enough how to live the life of taking the resources of nature and making happiness out of it. Etc. Thankless task, but expertly done. Before he begins creation, with this process of self-realization that he undergoes, he is given all the ingredients. He is given a plan. He is given the creative potency to do it. And the personality of Godhead giving him the intelligence how to make the plan work. On your mark, it's set. Go. I mean, he must not like what he's doing. But he does it very expertly because it's what Vishnu wants. It's not exactly what Vishnu wants is living entities come back to him. But some living entities say, no, I'm rebellious. I don't want to give up my rebellious nature, sorry. No. Okay, you're under the authority of the state. Here's your prison cell. But before there's the prison cell, there's the rules of prison life. So that's this morning's verse. And he's the head of our sampradaya because he had perfect knowledge. From the perfect person, aparushaya shabda praman, passed down through disciplic succession. And thus how important is disciplic succession? Let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So regarding the pramana, even if we take the Bhagavatam as the best pramana, so in practical situation, some people may may resonate with certain theme, or two people can have different understandings in taking the knowledge from Srimad Bhagavatam.
Sure.
So then it can create conflict in
What
the
can
practical
create?
dealings.
Let's be clear what we're saying. You're saying two different opinions about what the Bhagavatam said can create conflict.
Yeah.
Sure.
Then how one should go about it in the practical dealings.
Purity is the force. Now, is it possible? The answer to this question is yes. Is it possible that two perfected souls can have diametrically opposite understanding of the same message of Srimad Bhagavatam? Second question, is it possible that two conditioned souls can have diametrically opposite understandings of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Yes. So now the question is, what do we do? Make sure that the person you're hearing from is a perfected soul. And allow for the fact that this perfected soul and that perfected soul may have diametrically, or shades of difference, not necessarily diametrically opposite view. So you have to see the credential, the characteristic, the lakshana of the perfected soul. And not just, snapshot, the big picture of who they are. There's further details. Their realization is resting on Shastra. Supposing their realization is not resting on Shastra, then it bounces.
Guru Maharaj, I've sometimes heard you say that the first element to come in the material world is false ego,
False
and the
ego.
last to go.
Yeah.
So would you please explain, it seems like false ego is the sum of all these.
It's the mystic here. Let's go through the language. The translation in the verse is self-deception.
Mm-hmm.
And the purport unless a living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life. Therefore, the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's real identity. But which enables forgetfulness of real identity. There's divisions, the throwing and covering potencies of, but it's false ego. It's one of the 8, and it's the most subtle of the 8. The living entity is greeted with open arms by false ego, enwrapped, covering the jiva is false ego. Now your question is, are all of these the sum total of false ego? And it's very specific. There you can say corollary features to false ego, like misidentifying the products of creation to be mine, and fear of death. They're byproducts of, but they're not exactly what false ego is. It's this one thing that's mentioned. Is it clear?
Yes.
Next.
And these are in the conceptual stage, right? The sense of death. This is before the subtle or the gross elements actually come into existence.
Yeah. Look, if you're going to be Brahma, you have to know how to do it. But he gets the blueprint, the master plan. It's like, as I was reading this, I was thinking about the construction company that built this place. They had to get the ingredients before they built the place. And where this, then find out from the customer which type of flooring do you want, and how do you. So they have to gather the ingredients. So he's gathering the ingredients. There's going to be diversification, but these are essential ingredients. Then it gets diversified by people like himself that know how to diversify. But there's categories. There's a warehouse of this and there's a warehouse for that.
And it seems like in Goloka, there are no demons, but there is this sense of fear or a sense of...
But that's different.
Yes.
That's a transcendental emotion, not to be likened to the material emotion. The material emotion is a reflection of the transcendental. Fear of death that Brahma creates is not of the spiritual world. It's of this material world, arising from forgetfulness of who I really am. The byproduct language. Others?
Is there a difference between nescience and ignorance?
Generally speaking, words can be synonymous, but they're different words in part because there's shades of difference between this word, that word. But, keep it simple besides shades of difference. They're the same. Nascience, no knowledge. Science and no science. Nescience. Ignorance, I don't know. That's ignorance. How's that?
Complicated way of creation.
The language, it's just language. Don't worry about it. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In the purport of this verse, it says that it is evident that.
It's saying what?
It is evident.
It's evidence.
Evident.
Evident.
That all these, this nescience, they are creations of Brahma. That means, one second, I just went out of it. So, they are not coming from Krishna. That is.
They're what?
They are not coming from Krishna.
Oh, come on. Why you say that?
It says it is evident that they are creations of Brahma.
But that's okay. He's got a service.
Oh.
Do you do some service? Sometimes you do. All living entities are always doing service. Always. And it's evident you're doing service. Always. And his is creation. So it's evident he's doing his service. But where does he get the ability? Where does he get the ingredients? Where does he get anything? What do we do? From the source. Thank you very much. You have something.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, one comment and one question. My chanting has been really dry.
Sounds like your voice is too. What happened to your voice? Too much chanting, maybe.
But this referring to Queen Kunti's prayers has been helping me for the last couple of days.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Did you try that little exercise? Remember the exercise I requested at the beginning of your chanting day?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And my question is, as we're beginning the new year, we're setting goals for this year for ourselves. And I've been thinking about this purpose. I'm trying to understand, setting goals and what is the purpose, because they kind of seem correlated but different.
Is this a language question? What's the difference between goal and purpose?
Yes, that's the first part. And the second part, you mentioned in the lecture, we should know our purpose and properly utilize it. So I find like I don't have a lot of clarity in, what's my purpose. So how to get that clarity? What's the difference between them two and how to gain that clarity?
Let's do the second one first. How do you get purpose clear? Two things. Keep asking the question. Supposing you don't get an answer, keep asking the question. And simultaneously seek purity so that the answer can be, you become a better recipient of Krishna's intelligence so you can know better the answer to your question. Any question. This one is a very important question. That's how to. And read scripture and do things that bring purity. Chant with attention and absorption. Those two words, attention and absorption. And you can ask me, what's the difference between them? Yes, next question. But the purpose is one of Prabhupada's favorite words, connected to a phrase spoken by Prahlad to Hiranyakashipu, na te vidu sva artha, purpose, swa artha. They do not know their swa artha. Swa means one's own. Artha. Now, artha has different meanings. The standard, common meaning is economic development. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But a deeper meaning, a more meaningful meaning, more personal meaning, is that which you value. Because economic development, artha, as its purpose is, I want money. Because money will get me what I want. What do I want? Kama. That's not what one's real self-interest is. So self-interest or purpose, swa, artha, gatim. Gatim means goal. Connection. Sva, artha, gatim. That's purpose. People don't know the purpose of life. Na te vidu swarta gatimi Vishnu. People don't know the purpose of life. So how do you know the purpose of life? Well, you keep asking. You can read it in scripture, and through authority you can make a statement, this is the purpose of life. But then that's one way of knowing. That's through the authority. And then you can adopt it as yours. But what's your experience of that at the heart level? That's a deeper sense of purpose that you can live your life by. Make decisions, this and not that, that and not this, based upon alignment with your purpose. And it's good to ask the question and to keep asking the question and refine your sense of the answer. What's your purpose? Now, the first of the two questions is the two words sound the same? Are they the same or are they different? Purpose and goal, right? They can mean the same. It's kind of like a Venn diagram. There's an overlap. And one way, a way that makes sense to me at least, is purpose has both goal and process, and goal is primarily the destination. Like sadhana and sadhya. Sadhya is the goal. And sadhana is the means to reach the goal, but it keeps the goal in mind. That's purpose. At least that's, a way, it's a way that worked for me to see the distinction between purpose and goal. Goal is the end, the bell rings, that's it. The purpose is to get there, and the means helps us get there. And making the right choices in the course of life that align us with the goal, that's purpose. It's okay? I see a few hands up. Why don't you do the online questions? There's a comment. Okay.
By Yamuna Jivana Prabhu.
Okay.
Prabhu has given a reference from the Patanjali Yoga Sutra 2.3 that correlates a little bit more strongly with the 5 darknesses created by Brahma. The Yoga Sutra 2.3 is Avidya Ashmita Raga Dvesha Abhinivesha Klesha. The impediments to samadhi are nescience, ego, desire, aversion, and clinging to life.
And pleading?
Clinging to life.
To life.
Then I also have read this in...
It's fear of death.
Yes. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary also...
Commentary on
this verse, he quotes this and then gives parallel to what is given in the verse in Bhagavatam.
He quotes which this?
This Yoga Sutra 2.3.
Okay. So Vishwanath Chakra, is that, I wonder if Jivana Jivana came up with that one by looking at Vishwanath's commentary. I'm just curious, probably. And Jivana Jivana, if you have, you provided me with a PDF that has the 1 point, the first part of Yoga Sutras. If you have the 2 point everything in a PDF, send that to me. Next.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Go ahead.
My question is about drawing parallels between what Brahma's creation with some modern inventions, so like atomic weapons.
For atomic weapons?
Yeah.
Gosh.
So, maybe the intention may be not right, but then the people are misusing those things. So it is like a disaster, right? In the case of Brahma, the purpose is, because the living entities wants it, that is the purpose of the material world. These bad things that are being created. But in the other way to see it is, if something like that is there, the people, it's easy to misuse those or get...
Yeah. Free will is there. Something has proper, something has improper use. And free will is there. Brahma isn't responsible for misuse. Brahma is responsible for fulfilling the desire of the Supreme Person. Go ahead. You have something. Your mind is so restless. The microphone is pretty restless too.
Yeah, my mind is so restless. I'm too many things going on in the brain when I'm reading this verse.
Chittavritti.
If you can help me clarify these things, that will be really grateful to you.
Could you be a little more specific? Clarify something.
When I am reading this verse, the translation especially, my mind is telling that, because Brahma is also a material person. He is part of the material world.
He's part of?
Material world.
Yeah, he is a bearer of the Lord's creative potency, Srishti Shakti, and he's doing it. Now,
So, like how human beings in this material world create so many chaos.
under the order of the Supreme Lord, because it's not just creating chaos, it's creating an opportunity for no more chaos.
Apparently it looks like he's doing.
Look, Prabhupada's example, when you build when the government builds a prison house, is it nice? By design, it's not nice. It's not comfy. There's discomfort. There's unpleasantries built into a prison. There's a purpose behind the unpleasantries. It's not just mean spirit. It's teaching people, don't be rebellious of the laws of the state. So for creation, don't be rebellious of the fact that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. And if you continue to rebel, there's consequences. There are lessons built in the creation to teach you that's not a good plan, not a good choice. So let your mind stop spinning by acknowledging the Supreme is very kind. He doesn't go around hurting people whimsically, capriciously. So here we are, where there's unpleasant things. There's a lesson behind those unpleasant things. What's the root cause of our being in the material existence? There's different ways of answering that open-ended question. Enviousness, misuse of free will, ignorance. There's 3 choices from the nice menu, and all of them are correct. So that once you know the root cause, what to do? Pull out the root. Don't just trim the leaves of the weed. Pull out the root of the weed. That's the opportunity human life provides. Supposing there's lower forms of life that aren't human, they suffer without choices. Human life has choices, more freedom, more developed consciousness. Use it well. Become peaceful.
Yes, Maharaj.
Thank you. You have something, you usually have something. Okay. Someone else? Before you speak, I want to find out if there's someone else that hasn't spoken yet. Okay.
Yamanajan Prabhu gave the Yoga Sutra reference only. He remembers from reading.
Just for his own reading.
Yeah, I was adding on top of it.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. But
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. It's probably a basic question, but it's something that I keep thinking about as my chanting. I really struggle with as to why is the holy name so elusive?
why is it so?
So elusive. Elusive.
I know what the word is.
Because, and again, my mind thinks about even Mahaprabhu seems to have said, Nanu Raga.
The mind, the name is not elusive, the mind is.
I mean, in spite of having the desire and the intention.
The mind's a rascal. You know the Avanti Brahman story, right? Bhagavatam, Krishna speaking to Uddhava, there's the answer. The mind. Why? Here's saying the same thing, in poetic fashion. You know about Bharatnatyam dance, right? And the person who was the creator of Bharatnatyam dance, his name? Bhatrimuni. Bhatrimuni not only taught Bharatnatyam dance, he had a whole series of writings on rasa, because Bharatnatyam dance is meant through dance form to evoke emotion. So Rupa Goswami borrowed or drew from much of what he wrote on the science of rasa and developed it further. So they're not one-to-one correlation. So Bhatrimuni has this nice saying, the mind is like a monkey. The mind is like a drunken monkey. The mind is like a drunken monkey that's been bit by a scorpion. And you want to know why is the holy name elusive? Our mind is out of control. So what to do? That's the next question. Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasananyakamino. And then these nice teachings of Patanjali, I find that it's a one-to-one correlation between what Rupa Goswami writes and what he writes, but the language is very simple. So we practice in short language. And what does practice involve? And then you define what practice involves, and that's what you do. Because the mind is a drunken monkey that's been bit by a scorpion. Wild. You get the last question.
Okay. I was just thinking it somewhat like Panduranga Prabhu's question. This Lord is in this, that Tad Brahma Nishkala, Vishuddha Sattva. When we cannot understand, he even knowing these demoniac kind of natures, we cannot associate it with him. So, because he is in that pure whiteness state of goodness, how do we, then it confuses.
How do we do what? What's your question?
That he is creating this
bad stuff.
This nescience, the elements of nescience.
That's his assignment.
Okay, got it, Maharaj, got it. Hare Krishna.
It's a double-edged sword. The nescience, or the suffering that comes from nescience, is meant to remind people, don't make these misuse of free will choices. Now, I'm going to make those free will choices to where I like, because I'm independent. And that's the way I want it. So there, stick out your tongue. It is to help people that are in that misuse of free will disposition get a bang on the head and understand that's not the right choice to make, please. And if you continue to make the foolish choices, there's consequences. That is to say, people like you that don't make those wise, you make wise instead of foolish choices, you're protected. Krishna is protecting you by having Brahma create that stuff. You can be distant from that misuse of free will stuff and its consequences. But you have to pass through that path to get there. And be tolerant and respectful and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's for you to do.
His relationship with Krishna, how intimate and deep it is, and how he's actually not exactly, I mean, he's one of the demigods, not exactly a demigod. So I was just wondering if you could throw some light about his relationship with Krishna in terms of, how we see
How what?
how we see in light of other pure devotees.
Now you're speaking about Brahma.
Yes.
The spotlight's on Brahma.
Yes.
And he has a relationship with Krishna.
Yes.
And you want to get a spotlight on his relationship with Krishna. That's what you want?
Yes.
He's his unalloyed servant. And because he has all this Srishti Shakti, creative potency, he sometimes gets a little carried away. Not aggressively carried away, but a little carried away, like Brahma Vimohan Leela. And Krishna smiles and reminds him what his position is. But he is an unalloyed devotee, the head of a sampradaya, one of the 12 great authorities. His relationship is, I'm representing the Supreme in a manner that is entrusted to me to carry out, the thankless task. But there's a purpose, and I understand the purpose, and so I do what the Supreme Lord wants. So he's in the mode of a servant, unalloyed service, giving knowledge, but also creating opportunities for people that don't want knowledge. They want nescience. Here it is, because the Supreme Lord is going to facilitate your regard for him. All the while wishing, sending representatives, empowering others, etc., to make the right choice instead of the wrong choice. Servant. I think I want to end. Srila Prabhupada ki.